What is an extremely dark/creepy true story that most people don't know about? The fact that 3 sailors were trapped alive in the submarine wreckage of the USS West Virginia after the attack on Pearl Harbor. They survived for 16 days, kept a calendar, and constantly knocked on the ship's hull in an effort to alert rescuers. However, they were also sitting on tons of sunken live ammunition, and there was no adequate technology to rescue them. Thus, those above ground simply had to listen to a haunting banging noise for 16 days. The story was only recently made public. The Snowtown Murders, also known as the Bodies in Barrels murders, were a series of homicides that took place in South Australia between August 1992 and May 1999. The crimes were uncovered on May 20, 1999, when the remains of 8 victims were found in barrels of acid in a rented former bank building. The building was littered with tools used by the killers to torture and murder their victims, including knives, a bloodstain saw, double-barreled shotgun, coils of rope, rolls of tape, rubber gloves, cloths, and a variac metallurgy tool that the killers used to administer electric shocks to the genitals and other sensitive parts of the victim's body. Mary Bell, one of the youngest serial killers. On mobile, so I can't link, but there's articles. She was just a kid, around 10 if I recall correct. She killed other children, went to the funerals, and even psychologically harassed a mother of a victim. She carved her initials with scissors into a victim. Killed a toddler by leading it to a secluded area and crushing his skull. Her mother let men rape Mary, also. Mary Bell has changed her name and is alive today, I'm quite sure. Living a life and saying that's nothing like who she is now. In my hometown in 2006, a 10-year-old girl was kidnapped. There was a huge search that went on to only find that her apartment upstairs neighbor had taken her. He raped her both alive and dead and then cut her into pieces and soaked her in meat tenderizer. He also cut her head about halfway through at the mouth. She was found in plastic tubs in meat tenderizer. He planned on eating her. Creepy to me because it happened 3 blocks from my house and I was one of the last people to see her alive. Story there is I saw her at the outside the library shortly before she walked home and was abducted. Her name was Jamie Rose Boland, I think. This one is just from what my mom told me. I was too little to remember or understand what was happening. So some info might be off. The town I live in now has a creepy story as well. In the early 1990s, a little boy went missing. They looked everywhere for his body and finally found it in a trash bag hidden in a frisbee golf course. He was still alive. He was raped and his genitals were mutilated, but the worst part is that his kidnapper cut the little boy's eyelids off so that he had to watch. The boy said that the man lured him to the park by saying that the kidnapper lost his dog and asked the kid to help find him. The man was never found and the boy is still alive today. I don't think most people realize just how dark and creepy things are just across the border to the south in Mexico are and have been for the last few years. Torture houses. Ritual body mutilations. Mass graves constantly being dug up filled with countless bodies showing signs of torture and mutilation. A house was found full of limbs, arms and legs. No heads or torsos. The stew maker of Tijuana who disposed of over 300 bodies in barrels of acid. What about the hundreds of missing women from the Juarez area? I'm not religious, but I do see a problem when people are now worshipping death as a religion. There are police officers who have murdered more people than any American serial killer ever has. Truckloads of bodies just being parked on the street and left for people to find when the sun comes up. Imagine if somebody parked a Ford pickup truck in a Target parking lot in Culver City overnight with 14 bodies in the bed of it. The corpses show signs of being killed 12 months ago and 12 hours ago. Missing limbs and heads. Signs of torture and mutilation. Americans would shit bricks. That is normal in some places in Mexico right now. Look at Mexico and what's going on all along the border regions. It's freaking very dark and very scary. There is a phenomena on the coast of North Carolina called Seneca guns. There are sudden booms that sound/feel like a sonic boom or an earthquake, but time and time again, there are no aircraft in the area, nor is any seismic activity recorded. I just discovered this while I was there last week when I was awoken by the house rattling, like someone had bumped the pylons with their car. When no cause could be found, I went to the internet to look for an earthquake offense, and that is when I found out about the Seneca guns. The lead masks case. In 1966, in Brazil, a boy flying a kite found two dead guys wearing lead masks. They wore raincoats and had a bottle of water with them, as well as notebooks saying 1630 be at the agreed place. 1830 take capsules after effect metals wait for mask sign. The capsules could have been, and probably were, poison, but the bodies were incorrectly stored and became contaminated. All we know about the men was that they went into a shop and bought raincoats and the bottle of water at a shop and went straight to the hill. Nobody knows where they got the tablets or what they expected to happen. The case remains unsolved 47 years later. This will definitely get buried, but heck. A few years ago, my sister went to view a house for rent. Both her and her BF loved it and were going to take it there, and then as they went outside to go back to the rental office, the estate agent turned around and told them that she had something she must tell them before they signed anything because she couldn't live with herself if she didn't. She said that a few months ago, the house had been occupied by a family of 4, a husband and wife, and their 5-year-old daughter and newborn son. The mother, suffering from bipolar disorder and religious fantasies, had gone crazy one day and force-fed the baby pages of a Bible and doused it in white spirit and doused the little girl in it too. The baby died, but the little girl survived. My sister said that the estate agent took them round to the front of the property, they'd come in and out of the back, and you could see the paint stripper marks on the road still where the little girl had run out the house and thrown it up on the road. I can't find anything about this on the internet. My sister isn't one for lying or exaggeration though, and why would the estate agent say that if it wasn't true? It happened in or around Cambridge, England, possibly in one of the villages like Milton or Cottenham. William Edward Hickman kidnapped a girl, holding her for ransom so that he could go to Bible college. He promised to return her, and when the ransom was delivered, her father could see her in the passenger seat of the car. Hickman drove off, then threw the girl out of the car. Only then could her father see that she was already dead, dismembered and disemboweled, and her limbs had been wired back to her body to make it appear as if she were still alive. Story I heard when I was 11. Someone broke into an older couple's house in the next town while they were on vacation. They messed up some stuff, but not a thing was taken or stolen. The factor that makes this story frightening is the cats. Apparently these folks had 2 adored house cats. Loved their pets, as any owner does. Whoever broke into their house killed their cats. Not just killed, but mutilated. They stabbed them and maimed them and smeared the blood on the living room walls, along with pieces of the cats. The cat's caretaker discovered the next morning. Chills me and makes my stomach turn. A study abroad student came into a university in my city and asked to speak with one of the representatives of their park exchange program. The people at the university had no idea what she was talking about and asked her to explain. Apparently, she signed up for a study abroad program that was in my city. Her job was to work in this little kiddie park with a merry-go-round and sightsee. She was told only to bring $300 to $500 with her for the entire summer. So the administrators asked for her to call the number that she booked through. The man who she booked through was very mad that she didn't wait at the airport for him. She took a cab straight from the airport to the university. Turns out some psychopath was using a well-established university as a front to lure study abroad students from Russia to the United States in order to kidnap them and use them for sex trafficking. They sent the girl back home straight away, and reported the incident to the police. Not sure if they caught the guy. The SS Orang Medan. No survivors were found on board the Orang Medan in June 1947, but what was most disturbing was the nature of the bodies, all frozen in place looking up towards the sun, their arms outstretched, mouths gaping, and a look of immense horror on all their faces. A trip to the communications room revealed the author of the SOS messages, also dead, his hand still on the Morse sending key, eyes wide open and teeth bared. Strangely, there was no sign of wounds or injuries on any of the bodies. On January 30, 1661, the 12th anniversary of the execution of Charles I, Cromwell's body was exhumed from Westminster Abbey, and was subjected to the ritual of a posthumous execution, as were the remains of Robert Blake, John Bradshaw, and Henry Ireton. The body of Cromwell's daughter was allowed to remain buried in the abbey. His disinterred body was hanged in chains at Tyburn, and then thrown into a pit, while his severed head was displayed on a pole outside Westminster Hall until 1685. On August 2, 1988, Stephen Mignogne and Michael Giunta, two teenagers from near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, went to the nearby town of Irwin. They stopped at a video arcade, and met two girls, Penny Ansell, 13, and Melissa Baker, 12. They convinced the girls to go back to Steve's parents' house in Trafford, a few miles away. When they arrived at the 5th Street home, Mignogne took Penny Ansell upstairs, and Giunta and Baker chatted in the living room. After a while, Mignogne called down and told Baker that her friend needed her, so Baker went upstairs. A little while later, Mignogne asked Giunta to come upstairs to help him with something. Giunta entered the bathroom to see the body of Melissa Baker, her throat slashed, lying in the bathtub. She was still alive, feebly moving and struggling to breathe. Giunta ran out of the house, and was 5 blocks away, walking across the Trafford Bridge, when Mignogne caught up to him in his truck. Mignogne begged Giunta to get into the truck. He got in, and they drove to a secluded road in nearby Monroeville. Giunta refused to help, and stayed in the cab while Mignogne dumped the bodies of Ansell and Baker, wrapped in black trash bags, over a hillside. Mignogne then drove Giunta to his house, let him out of the truck, told him, "I love you," and drove back to his own home to clean up the blood. Giunta went to the police. Mignogne will spend the rest of his life in prison. He was up for the death penalty, but citing bad influences on his life, his older brother was in jail, he had been molested at age 10, and he listened to heavy metal and read pornographic magazines, he was given life without parole. Steve lived 1.5 blocks away from me, on the same street. We rode the same school bus, and we were in Boy Scouts together. He played hacky sack with my friends, and was a pretty normal guy. Towards the last day of Yom Kippur War, Golda Meir, then the Prime Minister of Israel, instructed the Israeli Air Force to prepare to drop atomic bombs on all neighboring countries, sort of saying, if we go down, you go down with us. Few bomber jets were ready with the bombs, on the runway, waiting for the command to bomb Cairo, Damascus, Beirut, and Amman. They were called off in the last second. If they would have gone ahead with those plans, the effects of those bombs on the area would be more than devastating, and would have caused the loss of many more lives as well as almost complete destruction of Israel itself. Even to this day, Israel still has atom bombs and protocols that indicate they would be used in case the Israeli Air Force is almost completely destroyed or if enemy troops and tanks reach a certain point. This is one of the reasons war in the Middle East is so fucking scary, especially if you live here. The Harp brothers, they are America's first known serial killers. They would go around with renegade Native Americans and kill whoever they could find. It was said that Big Harp once bashed his infant daughter's skull into a tree because she was making too much noise. In all, they may have killed over 40+ people. When they were finally caught, their heads were cut off and placed at opposite ends of the trail that killed the most on. Charles Cullen, he was a nurse that would kill people right before they were going to be released. You would go in for a broken arm or the flu, and then he would give you a drug that made your heart stop. What's worst is that the hospitals caught him multiple times but couldn't just fire him and passed him on to other hospitals. He has 29 to 35 confirmed kills, but police suspect it's really about 400 kills. I went to school at LSU, and while there were 2 serial killers operating at the same time in the Baton Rouge area, they were connected to and convicted on a total of 10 murders, but evidence was never able to link them to close to 20 more. Sean Vincent Gillis and Derek Todd Lee. They both preyed on college girls, broke into their house and raped and murdered them and dumped their bodies in various locations around the Baton Rouge area. Swamps, bayous, etc. One young lady was found in the bayou about 100 yards behind my house my sophomore year. It was a pretty surreal time. I remember coming home one day and seeing about 10 ADT vans on my block because of all the girls having alarms installed. Girls were begging their guy friends to come and stay with them, etc. They never even knew there were 2 different killers, because their styles were so similar, until after they caught DTL because the killings continued after his arrest. The Chernobyl disaster occurred during a safety experiment which was to test the ability of the reactor to use regenerative braking like in electric cars to give a small boost to the safety systems. Due to a few things going unexpectedly, the reactor operators had to either put the reactor in an unsafe configuration and disable some automatic safety systems, or cancel the test. They decided to perform the test. Without realizing it, the start of the test is actually what started the nuclear disaster. Soviet serial killer Anatoly Slivko. He organized a hiking club for teens in southern Russia in the 1960s. He would earn their trust, and then offer some of them to participate in secret experiments and resuscitation during the hikes. He would hang his victims from a tree until they lost consciousness, and then do CPR on them, ruining their future health. He filmed these experiments. Once he suspected that a boy would inform on him, Slivko would murder the boy. Eventually the police found out, arrested Slivko, searched the club premises and found a locked room with the films. Unfortunately, by then 7 boys were already dead. John Edward Robinson was a serial killer in the Belton/Raymore suburban area of Kansas City. He went online and lured women looking for a BDSM relationship to himself and then killed them. They found several of the bodies in a storage unit in Raymore, Missouri, preserved in chemicals. My high school theater department rented the storage unit next to his. A few months before they discovered the bodies, I was unloading furniture and costumes for a production of Grease. Everyone commented that the storage unit smelled kinda funny, not like dead bodies, but chemicals. Can't remember his name because I'm from the UK and this happened in America, but a pizza guy was going to rob a bank with 2 friends. They said they would put a fake bomb on him and told him to say that it was real. Well, he met up with them and it turns out it was a real bomb. He tried to run, but when one guy fired a gun he stopped, so he wouldn't be shot. They gave him a shotgun shaped like a walking stick and put the bomb on. With each task he completed, the more time he had before the bomb exploded. He got caught by the police and basically while the bomb squad came, he exploded, on live TV. Some people think that this inspired 30 minutes or less, but the directors denied it. There was also a GIF of it on Reddit yesterday. The actual story of the crucifixion of Christ. What most people believe is that he was nailed to a cross from his hands and feet, had a beard, and was wearing a loincloth. In truth, he was nailed at the wrists, not the hand. The reason was that the carpals of the hands are not strong enough to hold the weight of the body, and since his arms were holding most of his weight, his shoulder muscles eventually gave out and they both dislocated, placing a large amount of stress on his windpipe and diaphragm, making it near impossible to breathe, which also contributed to his death. 23.41. Secondly, the beard you see in most depictions was not there. The Romans actually plucked his beard out hair by hair. Also, he did not wear a loincloth. The depiction of him wearing it is just for modesty's sake. Lastly, Christ was also unrecognizable because of the beating done to his face. About 4 years ago, in my hometown, a little girl was snatched right out of the parking lot of her apartment complex in broad daylight. Only problem was that nobody saw who her kidnapper was. Anyway, the search parties all lined up in parking lots and did a combing search pattern of the county. 10 days later, nothing was turned up. Absolutely no leads. The murder of Aurora Gagnon. Essentially, her father married a widow of his cousin to look after his children while his wife was dying of tuberculosis. She had already 4 children to what was reported as natural deaths. Aurora's brother was found suffocated under a mattress a few weeks before her mother succumbed to her illness. In approximately 4 years, Aurora is admitted to a hospital for an ulcerated foot. The doctor noticed many other old and recent injuries on her. Her stepmother beat her with an axe handle among other things. She died shortly after. She was 11. The worst part was that many people from the village suspected and/or knew what was going on but did nothing. Aurora died of blood poisoning from 52 wounds on her body. Also, this happened in Canada. Every night at my father's new house I would wake up with a very eerie feeling like somebody was watching me or in the same room, so I started keeping track of the events that would happen in the house. There were moments where I would hear footsteps when nobody was home, or the radios would go off, or the chairs in the dining room would creak. The most recognizable thing that would happen though is waking at the hour of 3:33 a.m. in the morning. Every night I would wake up this hour and look at the alarm clock and feeling cold and clammy and just really uncomfortable and could not go back to sleep because I could feel eyes watching me. This went on for 3 weeks straight. Every time I would wake at this hour, but this night was different. When I woke up I saw the numbers, then looked around and heard my lamp fall on the ground. I looked for anything that might have caused it and I thought it was my cat, but the door was closed and I couldn't find him under the bed or in the closet. I told my dad everything that happened and he gave me a grim look and said I could go back to my mother's for the rest of school break. He sold the house and bought a new one a few years later. I have asked him if he knew anything about the house and only recently he has said few things about it. That was just an unreal feeling in that place and he didn't feel safe there. There is a place on the island of Oahu that is located in Waimea Falls Park. It's a popular diving spot, but there have been many drownings in the past. One particular incident happened somewhere in the 70s when 3 friends went swimming at the falls pond. One kid dove off of the cliff and never came back up. His friends tried to look for him but they couldn't find him, so they called the police and after 3 days of searching they found the body lying face down on a rock. Long story short, the story goes that the young man who jumped from the cliff was actually alleged used in human sacrifice, male, by the ancient Hawaiians for a aku or god. There are also other incidents where people swimming in that pool have felt someone or something grab them by the ankle.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.